So, thank you all to be there. We are just waiting for the moderator. He will join in 50 minutes. So actually, I'm also outside, so that's why I couldn't put my camera. So thank you to all of you to be there, and especially the special rapporteur Fernand de Varenne, who come regularly to all of our meeting. And unfortunately, he can stay there only for 50 minutes. So what I suggest, it's we try to have one speaker first by different nation and people. So we can start also Dr. Pauline Mann, who will stay also for first 50 minutes, then he can be back again. And Baban Elian, then also we can start with Jojo Ambassador. No, sorry, the speaker from Southern Cameroon. So Jojo Anand.
Yeah, Jojo Ambassador is also right. It's fine.
Okay. So what I suggest, it's really we can move to the first speaker, and really thank you all to be there. And it's really we organize it in 2 days. So I hope that this event, this side events, it's also regarding to the 49th session of Human Rights Council. So we also invite the team from OHCHR there. They said there will be someone will be there for take notes. So I don't know if they are here or not. And please feel free to. What I ask to the speakers is to be very short and use maximum the special rapporteur who's there to ask him some question and also some direction to give him. And please try to be short. Thank you all. And we start directly by Professor Pauline Mann. Professor Pauline Mann, he's from University of Bangalore, and he used to work already for more than 25 years on human rights issue. And yeah, Professor, the floor is yours. Professor, please unmute and you can talk. Dr. Pauline Mann. Dr. Pauline Mann, please unmute yourself. Professor? Professor? We can start with Baban. Baban,
Bosco, can I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I would like to thank the organizer of this event. I would like to greet Dr. Fernand de Varenne, as well as all the participants. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about the grievance of ethnic and religious minorities in Iran. Iran is composed of different ethnic and religious groups. The non-Persian ethnic minorities make up more than half of the Iranian population. The main minorities groups are Kurds, Turkish-speaking Azeris, Arabs, Baluch, Lur, and a smaller population of Armenians and Turkmen. Indeed, in Iran, there is no minority who has the majority. Since the creation of modern Iranian state nation in 1906, the rulers in Tehran have imposed a brutal chauvinistic system based on the supremacy of the Persian ethnicity and of the Shiite faith. Non-Persian peoples are denied the rights to public education in their own language. Forced Farsi language education is one major tool used by the Iranian regime to forcibly assimilate its non-Persian minorities. Here I gave one example of those discriminations against the minority in Iran. For example, according to the Article 115 of to have qualifications of a candidate for presidential in Iran, he has to have convinced belief in the fundamental principles of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the official mazhab of the country. This is the case in other high-ranking government posts, for example, for the Kurds who cannot accede. Since the declaration of fatwa by Ayatollah Khomeini against the Kurdish people in Iran in 1979, more than 10,000 Kurds, including civilians and Peshmerga, have lost their lives, and this violence continues till today. According to the Kurdish human rights groups, only in 2020, over 500 Iranian Kurds, including human rights defenders, were arrested for politically motivated reasons and charged with broad and vaguely worded national security-related offenses. According to the UN Special Rapporteur on Iran, Kurdish political prisoners charged with national security offenses constitute a disproportionately high number of those who received the death penalty and are executed. Till today, Kurds are deprived of their basic rights. Iran is accusing the Kurds to be secessionists for justifying its repression. However, the main Kurdish political parties in Iranian Kurdistan seeking an internal self-determination in form of federal system. The policy of denial by the Iranian government pushed many Kurds to opt for independence because they are convinced that no rights of the Kurds can be obtained within this chauvinistic system. The question is that if the right for full self-determination is justified by flagrant, serious human rights violation, it is happening now in Iranian Kurdistan because there is persistent oppression, targeted killings, domination, discrimination, marginalization, and injustice. The Kurds are denied any meaningful exercise of its rights to self-determination. Their representatives are excluded from any decision-making, especially in matters affecting the well-being and security of Kurdish people. The politic of linguistics carried out and Kurdish culture is suppressed. The discrimination against Kurdish regions is constitutionalized. As my question to Dr. Fernand de Varnes is that in what circumstances the remedial cessation can be applied as a solution? Thank you for listening.
So thank you, Baban, for your intervention, and thank to you to respect the time. And really, it's I think Dr. will answer later. So now we can continue with Professor Pauline Mann, who's from the University of Bangalore. Professor, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bosco. It's good to be back again. So, first and foremost, I want to greet all the panelists as well as greet all the women. Yesterday was International Women's Day. So, it's very sad when I greet the women because a large number of women in this meeting and world over, they suffer both as minority of minorities. Today we are discussing on minority issue, but then women are a minority even among the minorities, and they are the people who suffer a lot because of the ruthless oppressions on the different nations which don't have a nationality. Women are the ones who don't have nationalities among these nations, and that is where we really cannot celebrate the International Women's Day throughout the world. Yesterday we celebrated, but then these celebrations are confined only to a few sections of women, not for all. So, as all of us know, right from the time this movement for right to self-determination started way back in the 18th century with the beginning of the French Revolution, we find that the minorities have always been suppressed much before that also, but then everything was crystallized after the French Revolution, and we see people fighting for it. And then the 20th century came as a ray of hope for the minorities, wherein the establishment of the League of Nations and people like Woodrow Wilson as well as Vladimir Lenin, these are the people who came and then supported the call for right to self-determination. And the very establishment of the United Nations came as a great boon for people who fought for the right of self-determination. But unfortunately, certain very, very minor groups, for example, the Elam Tamils, the Baluts in Pakistan, who have been fighting for external self-determination, they have been completely suppressed. Whereas people in India, like the Sikhs, who fought for the internal self-determination, they were completely suppressed. And then, even to this day, the Kashmiris and many nationalities in the northeastern part of India are still continuing their fight for justice because they are people who have a distinct nationality. They fulfill the criteria laid down for self-determination. But despite these criteria being fulfilled uh, in terms of having sovereign land, in terms of having an acceptable language, in terms of having their own economic resources, their own land where they can produce as well as live together as a people. So where they have a history, especially the Elam Tamils, who have had their country of their own before the colonization until the year 1834. So these are the people who continue to suffer the most. So the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights came as a ray of hope for them, but unfortunately that did not work out in their favor. So that apart, we have seen the Security Council as well as the General Assembly passing innumerable number of resolutions to address this issue of right to self-determination, and also come out with rules on rules of international law that govern the question of right to self-determination. So here, some of the examples are the General Assembly Resolution 2131 of 1965. One of the first ones to come out speaking of the declaration of inadmissibility of intervention of states in domestic affairs and the protection of their independence and sovereignty. So this is found to be relevant even to this day. Then Resolution 36/103 of 1981 passed in the General Assembly. Again, they spoke very strongly of non-intervention of other countries. But then we have had a good number of other key resolutions also, especially the Declaration on the Right to Development and the that is General Assembly Resolution 41/128 of December 1986 is quite strong on this, wherein it speaks of the collective rights of the people, and it continues to be a high priority for the UN agenda. But still, it is not recognized under international law. It remains as a high priority in the UN, but international law doesn't recognize that. So it is here that we find a dichotomy in the position of international politics, wherein international law doesn't recognize, but the UN recognizes. So it is here that the notion of self-determination, which encompasses the economic self-determination and unrestricted use of one's natural resources underpins the very issue of right to development. Because when we speak of the right to development, you can't have a full-fledged development when people don't have the right to exercise that concept of development in their own areas, in their own motherlands. So it is here that the UN should very deeply reflect on such issues, and then we have experts here, and these experts should come out with solutions and recommendations wherein countries, wherein people fighting for self-determination, be it the Kurds or the Yemen Tamils, or people of Western Sahara, or our friends from Amazonia. These are the people who have been fighting for decades together. So they need to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So with this, I can go on, but then time is limited. So with this, I want to pose my reflections to Dr. Vernon, who's here, Dr. Farhan Vernon, who's here, so that he can come out with his own reply at a later stage. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Bosco. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for your intervention. And I think everyone here, most of us here know Dr. Professor Pauline Mann. He used to come regularly to the Human Rights Council, and I think he gave a lot of.
He'll be there in the Human Rights Council from the 14th onwards.
Yeah.
So for a week, I'll be there from 14th onwards. So it's nice, and then if possible, we can personally meet the others. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, Professor. So now we give the floor to Jojo Ambassador. He's from Southern Cameroon, and he's a human rights activist in exile. And we used to work with him for a long time in different, for almost personally, I used to work with their team for last 5 years now. And yeah, so I think it's a good opportunity for us to hear from Jojo Ambassador. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We, the people of Amazonia, would like to first of all thank the organizers of the 49th regular session of the Human Rights Council event. We thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. And in short, I just want to say that the situation in Cameroon right now is an ongoing genocide to the people of Amazonia. And like in the situation in 1994 in Rwanda, there are clear evidence that the military of France is actively helping the Republic of Cameroon in committing war crimes against the people of Amazonia on the soil. It is important to note that there are two distinct entities which form the country which is internationally known as Cameroon. That is the former Southern Cameroon, known today as Amazonia, and the Cameroon Republic. It should also be noted that these two territories have internationally demarcated and recognized borders with customs and immigration officers currently conducting checks at the borders. The name of the country, as it is today, removed the Southern Cameroon as part of the country. These facts are so often ignored to the detriment of the minority people of Amazonia. Today, the Southern Cameroon has been divided and reduced to barely 2 regions within the French Cameroon by the Cameroon authorities, acting exactly like our colonial masters, using 2 appointed proxy governors, 1 for each of the regions. This reduction from statehood to mere regions has given the colonial regime of La République du Cameroon the false legitimacy to crack down on the people who are legitimately fighting to restore their statehood that was eroded. La République du Cameroon argues they are fighting to maintain their territorial integrity. However, the territory of La République du Cameroon has obtained during their independence from the French back on the 1st of January 1960 did not include an inch of the territory of the Southern Cameroons. Like La République du Cameroon, the Southern Cameroons can assert her territorial integrity as per the 1916 Anglo-French agreement on boundaries of these 2 entities. There is a need to revisit our history to address the problem from the root causes. And it is important that the international community is already calling for the root causes to be addressed. The history of the people of the Southern Cameroon clearly defines who we are today as a people, distinct from the people of La République du Cameroon. The differences between the 2 entities is so vast that the British Parliament and the British politicians were alarmed back in 1961 by the proposed merger of the 2 people. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We are makers of history. We are not makers of history, we are history," which means a people is their history. Once that history is distorted, their identity and existence become under threat. The people of Amazonia are in this mess today because the world completely ignored the striking incompatibility between the 2 entities. This decentralization of federation, which the international community is proposing as a solution, is good at the surface level. However, none of these can be a sustainable solution to the crisis. The Senegambia experiment collapsed before it even started. Yet, these 2 people share common cultural values, practice the same religion, and speak the same language. A people similar in virtually everything except for the fact that they inherited 2 different systems of government from their colonial past, just as the Southern Cameroons and La République du Cameroon. The Canadian and Quebecois have more in common than the people of La République du Cameroon and Amazonia. They are inherently tolerant and recognize human worth and dignity. Additionally, they respect human rights and basic principles of democracy, yet they are struggling to sustain their union. The 2 cultures cannot coexist. If Charles de Gaulle of France could say, "Vive la Québec libre," that is, long live independent Quebec, the same call can be made for the people of Amazonia. If the Quebecois have been given the opportunity to decide their future in a referendum, that same opportunity should be given to us. The people of France and the English people cannot live. They've been fought a war for 100 years, a war called the 100-Year War, which was actually fought for 116 years. This is because the 2 cultures cannot live together. The conflict in the Southern Cameroon is not about the regime. It's about the system. It's about 2 different people who are distinctly different from each other, who cannot coexist together. It is important to know that barely 2 months after we voted to obtain independence by joining La République du Cameroon instead of Nigeria, La République du Cameroon voted against our independence, limiting us to these 2 choices. Ignoring the third option of independence against the aspiration of our people was a complete violation of our rights as humans. Mistakes are meant for humans to learn from and not to be repeated. The people of La République du Cameroon expressed hate speeches and call us all sorts of names, ranging from Biafrans, enemies of the state, to cubes of sugar, and they even asked us to go back to where we belong because they consider us as Nigerian. As a peace-loving people, for many years, we've been trying to solve this problem politically. Like the people of Ambazonia have been peacefully trying in vain to resolve the issue for over 60 years. During this period, we've demanded a return to the Bogus system, to the Bogus federal system of government, which was dismantled in 1972. In 1984, the president, by decree, withdrew from the union by reverting to its name, to the name of the country prior to the formation of the Federal Republic of Cameroon between the Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon. By this act alone, the union was officially broken. Hence, the continuous presence of the occupational troops and colonial administrators in the territory of Cameroon, in the territory of Ambazonia, is an aggression which must be condemned in equal terms as the invasion of Ukraine on the people, or the invasion of Ukraine by the people of Russia, although we do not have blue eyes and brown hairs. In 1996, due to pressure from organizers of the All Anglophone Conference 1 and 2, La Republique Parliament drafted a sham decentralization constitution without the intention of dissolving power. It took them over 22 years, the destruction of 400 villages, thousands of homes, and about 30,000 lives lost for them to start implementing the so-called special status. Despite the granting of the special status, delegates are appointed in areas where opposition candidates have been elected mayors to undermine their legitimacy. Non-indigenous regional administrators are appointed to be governors. They're not elected, they're appointed, and they are answerable to their master. Therefore, if under international pressure by any means, a devolution or a confederation agreement is arrived at between La Republique du Cameroon and Ambazonia, it will only be a matter of time for such an agreement to be discarded as it was in the past. When someone gives you anything, they can always take it back, especially if they have the power to do so. If advanced and civilized democracies like the United Kingdom and Canada are struggling to keep such union intact, their unions intact, it will be unreasonable to expect any good form of union between a primitive democracy like that of Cameroon. We have tried to make this work for over 60 years, but they have abused us. Some of our people are in exile, attempting to fix this because they attempted to fix the situation. Some have been massacred without trace. Today, we have over thousands of prisoners of conscience in various dungeons in Cameroon and within Ambazonia, managed by the colonial regime. Notably among them are the leader of the Ambazonia Liberation Movement, Ayok Chabi, Mr. Wilfred Tassan, one of the pioneers of the current wave of the liberation struggle, adopted in Nigeria, even though they were refugees and asylum seekers, against all international convention. We also have people like Mancho BBC, who led the Coffin Revolution. We have now reached our limit. We can no longer negotiate with La Republique du Cameroon. Cameroon have always been a bomb, a time bomb, or a volcano waiting to erupt. If there is any sense of justice left in the world today, a two-state mandated solution must be adopted and implemented as the only sustainable way forward. The decision to impose the Hobson choice was a bad experiment that has exploded right into our faces. Sir Winston Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." We cannot afford to repeat the mistakes of the past by trying to force these two people to become one. Cannot do that. Sorry about that. Yeah, we have some recommendations before I go. One of the recommendations, we are recommending that the international community should put pressure on Mr. Biya to call for a ceasefire and leave the territory of Ambazonia. We also call for the unconditional release of all political prisoners related to the armed conflict. We are also calling for the international community to send an independent fact-finding mission on the soil to ascertain the number of dead, missing people, and those involved in crimes against humanity. We are also calling for a the organization for a referendum so that the people of the Southern Cameroon can decide their destiny. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Jojo and Bazar, for your intervention. And really, I think it's very important to keep the time, and also it's very important to orient the intervention regarding the special rapporteur, because I think we need outcome from him, and also it's very important from him to make some notes to the General Assembly regarding the issue of different people and nation. So Fernand de Varenne, really thank to be there, and really I think we know each other for almost 6 years, 7 years. So thank you for being there, and for all the people who are seeking for their rights. And it's really big honor for us to have you, and your contribution. It's really very, very important for the right of the minorities, and also for all the nation also. So as we don't have much time, so please, the floor is yours. So thank you.
Many thanks. Many thanks to the Centre Zagros pour les droits de l'homme and the Global Tamil Movement for this kind invitation to meet with you and briefly to address this online meeting on the right of self-determination of nations and minorities. Unfortunately, I will have to leave in about 10 minutes because of other commitments, but I did listen very carefully to what the points that have been raised in relation to the situation in Iran, Cameroon, and Sri Lanka, and others also generally, which I know exists out there. I think perhaps one point that needs to be recognized and admitted is that these are very difficult and even dark days around the world in many areas. There's the impact of the pandemic, which has been affecting certain communities, certain minorities, and vulnerable populations, such as women and children, very significantly. Ongoing wars in Syria, Yemen, and the Ukraine, and other parts of the world, including, as we've just heard, in Cameroon, there's atrocities and violence also being committed in places like Iran and many others. We have also an environment around us which is threatening and unstable, and affects also some of our communities, and particularly some nations and minorities very significantly and very dramatically. And in many ways, we look around at the world around us, and we look at what is happening within the United Nations, and we're seeing that perhaps the human rights architecture and the United Nations in its role is not able to protect the world's most vulnerably as much as it should. Many issues, some of the issues that you raised here during this meeting are almost never discussed at the General Assembly or at the UN Human Rights Council, or in a very superficial way. And in fact, and once again, I think we need to be quite honest, the issue of some of the most vulnerable communities, such as minorities, but also unrepresented peoples and the nations are under occupation, are contested and even disregarded in many of the United Nations institutions. Now, I don't have answers to many of those questions, many of your questions, but I wish to emphasize the importance of telling the United Nations to do more, to telling the organizations that you are involved with as much as possible, and even in some cases, states, governments that you may have good relations with, that the United Nations has to do much more to address particularly situations as we have heard for Southern Cameroon and Iran and other parts of the world, because in reality, we have nations, we have minorities, we have peoples that are asking for self-determination, whose voices and presence is often never admitted, never recognized. I am an independent expert of the United Nations. I do not represent the United Nations. I can tell you that I have had dealings in UN offices in different parts of the world where they did not want to talk about the rights of minorities. Very clearly, I was told they will deny, in fact, that there are minorities in some. I can tell you that in Cameroon, I have had officials saying, well, there is no real minority in southern Cameroon because the population there are African. They're not English speaking. I've had this actually told to me directly. And here it is a problem because, and here I have to speak directly about my mandate. My mandate is limited to the rights of minorities. But as you know, and I think we have to say this, and this is an issue, a number of issues that I have been raising many times. Most of the world's conflicts today, violent conflicts, wars, internal conflicts, there are minority issues. And here I use the term minority in a general sense. It can be a religious minority, it can be an ethnic minority, can be a linguistic minority. They could also claim to be indigenous peoples in some situations. And there's nothing that actually says that they cannot be nations. But my mandate, and I must say this very clearly, my mandate is limited to minorities. But minorities can be inclusive of many different categories without excluding anyone and any other rights. But today, around the world, most of the conflicts involve minority groups, ethnic groups, against a state which they do not for because they are quite often, they have long-standing grievances, exclusion, discrimination, violence, and denial that they are actual equal citizens. You know this. You've heard this in many situations around the world. And that is why quite often you will have these minorities, nations, peoples who make claims of self-determination because they don't have they need to have a degree of political control of their community and their destiny. And under self-determination, this is perhaps one of the possibilities for this kind of protection that can be perhaps achieved through some form of self-determination. Most conflicts involve minorities. Most hate speech in social media, the targets of most hate speech in social media are minorities. Most of the world's quarters of the world's stateless people, millions of individuals that are denied any citizenship are minorities. I could go on and on and on, but these are some of the main challenges that we have at the 21st century, which are not being responded to sufficiently, in my view, by the United Nations. But I'm an optimist. I have to be an eternal optimist because that's my job in a sense. That's my mission. Just last year, the permanent mission of Liechtenstein to the United Nations in New York published a major report called the Handbook on the Prevention and Resolution of Self-Determination Conflicts. That's the theme also of your meeting. And I would urge you to have a copy. It's available on the internet, it's free. But you have here one government of a country in the world saying, and allow me to quote directly what they're saying, one of their main conclusions. They're saying, and I quote, "Full respect for the human rights of minority and indigenous communities is key to the prevention of self-determination conflicts. Many self-determination conflicts emerge from violations of the human rights of indigenous peoples and peoples belonging to ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities, most frequently relating to the legal system, language, and culture." There are governments in the world that agree, that understand this, and hopefully are willing to move in this direction. I mention this because it is also the most direct and clear suggestion that minorities, and also indigenous peoples, and peoples in a colonial context, may have also a right to some form of self-determination. Some cases it's internal, meaning inside a country, but a degree of autonomy and power to ensure that they can control their own political community and destiny. This is not a popular position to adopt these days at the United Nations. I think we have to acknowledge this. But in fact, there are many who really for different reasons, want to avoid even talking about minorities, and that the current political and ideological trends that we're seeing in many countries is a rise of majoritarian nationalism, that the nation dominated by one particular group is become more and more intolerant and even abusive and violent towards minorities. We have to recognize this, and we have to do more with United Nations institutions to wake them up. And I will have to go in a few minutes, but the word wake up, I think is important here. This year is the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Minorities. And it is clear that we need to do more and to do much better. The theme of this year's many activities, including regional meetings under my mandate, that is being held for Asia, Pacific, Africa and the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas as a whole, is to review, rethink, and learn. We need a new blueprint for the future at the United Nations to deal with minorities and other claims, such as what I would say self-determination in the way proposed by the government of Liechtenstein. So I would ask you, I would invite you to write to the United Nations, the OHCHR in particular, talking about creating a global Nations and Minorities caucus to move forward and to do a lot of the same initiatives very effectively of indigenous peoples. But we need to put on the agenda of the United Nations much, much, much more higher on the agenda of the United Nations, something stronger, some more approach, understanding, talking about self-determination for minorities and other groups at the UN, because that is not happening. A blueprint for the future, talking about minorities, talking about autonomy, talking about actually having the United Nations play a much greater role in the situations as we've seen, as we've heard with South Cameroon, with Iran, in many other parts of the world. We could go on and on, of course, but I think this is one point that I wanted to share with you. And I will, I have to leave in about 5 minutes, but I'm hoping that we have time for further exchanges on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Bernard, for beautiful presenting your views, and it is really enlightening us. And such a thing that we need to also proceed as you have suggested. We need to report in the UNO as well as in other international communities in a better way. So therefore, it is a enlightening talk that you have given us. And I also request you can also make a report in a General Assembly and the HRC. So it's also a small request from us that you could also present this particular matter to the in General Assembly also. I think you will be doing, hope you will be doing much better, and you will be helping us. And also simultaneously, you can also help us how to present this matter in a General Assembly or in any other international communities. You can also guide us due to your vast experience in this particular field. So therefore, it's really a privilege that we had with your talk with you, and really it's a wonderful talk. Anyone, the participants, if anyone wants to get some clarification, you can ask, because he will be leaving soon, very soon. Please, you can raise your hand and then you can ask your question and then get clarified. You are most welcome. So if there is, yes, say, Kijika, please, you can ask, yes.
Thank you very much for having me. My question here is, Mr. de Varenne, isn't that the case that the colonial powers like France, as it still is, are blocking countries and institutions and parts of the United Nations to make an issue out of the minorities' rights? And as in this case, especially of Ambazonia, they're blocking it, and so we don't have a chance. We don't know who to turn to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I can answer you directly and immediately. To my knowledge, one of the big obstacles currently is the position of the government of Cameroon. I raised the situation in Cameroon at a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half ago, at the United Nations General Assembly, by the way, directly. And the position, there was a statement of the representative of the government of Cameroon to the effect that the population of Southern Cameroon is not a minority. So therefore, I had no right to talk about this situation in the country. So to me, that is one of the more direct and significant barrier, at least in relation to my own role in trying to raise the legitimate grievances of the English-speaking minority in Cameroon in terms of the denial of respect of their human rights in a number of areas, such as education, the legal system, representation, also as in the civil service and other areas. So I would say my own experience has been that this position of the government of Cameroon is a clear obstacle.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question from NG Bond.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Varnes, for taking the time this morning to come be with us. Always appreciated as usual. How often do your reports go into the chairman or chairwoman or chairperson of the Human Rights Council? And what significance, what teeth do these reports have on the ongoings in the world? What outcomes can we expect from these meetings and these reports, except that we all hope that one day it's going to be better? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll answer very quickly by saying the reports of myself and all of the special rapporteurs never have as much impact as we would hope. Let's say that generally. In some cases, it does have impact. As special rapporteurs, we only issue annual reports once a year, one to the UN Human Rights Council and one to the UN General Assembly. We also add additional reports which are in connection with a country visit that we may be conducting. We're only allowed to do two country visits a year in the world. And this year I conducted a visit to the United States. My report is going to be presented in just over a week to the UN Human Rights Council. I was supposed to conduct a mission to Russia next week. You can imagine that's not going to happen in the current context. I think you have to understand that the special rapporteurs are, in a way, they are a mechanism. They're a tool. We also can submit reports in relation to allegations of some human rights violations that fall within our mandates. We can also sometimes issue a press release in connection to that kind of issue of allegations of violations of human rights. That doesn't always get a lot of attention. The reality is sometimes governments simply ignore what we write in that relation. But I said we are a tool, and the point that I think is important to realize is that you can use these special rapporteurs to raise the visibility and the international attention in relation to your situations. And I think this is how it's possibly much more useful, at least for some of you, maybe much more useful. You can get more international attention and focus sometimes. Now, you have to realize, and I'll finish very quickly, we have limited resources. And the reality is sometimes we don't even answer all of the requests that we receive. But you have to insist, you have to try to continue lobbying even special rapporteurs so that the special rapporteur may decide to make an extra effort and to address and raise these issues in different forums like the UN General Assembly. And just to emphasize the point, once again, I did raise the issue of Cameroon and the English-speaking community of Cameroon in the UN General Assembly. And I think that's the kind of attention that can be useful. And you have to try to use special rapporteurs and other mechanisms of the United Nations and other organizations as much as possible, even though it can be frustrating, long, and you may not see any results, but it's there. It might be used. It could raise awareness. It might be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. See, there are 3 questions. You have time. You can.
I have a few 2 minutes. I have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Okay. The next question from Sahara Raj.
Yeah, good evening. If we look at Ukraine and Russian conflict, like war is affecting Ukrainian people, and international organizations, including UN and the country leaders, are immediately calling as Russian genocide on Ukraine. But systematic genocide on Tamils began in the beginning of the 20th century, and mass atrocity committed by Sri Lankan military. My question is, considerably large scale of genocide took place in the Tamils homeland. Countless evidence submitted to the UN by various reliable resources to prove the genocide on Tamil. Then why UN and other leaders hesitant to call atrocity committed by the Sri Lankan state on Tamil as genocide? Why are they not ready to help the Tamils to lead their life with the self-determinations? Why is this double standard being created by the West? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will answer you very, very directly by saying the conflicts in many parts of the world, such as Yemen, Syria, Sri Lanka, Zaire, some parts of Africa also. Unfortunately, there is always a situation which seems a bit double standard. Yemen is one of the worst humanitarian crises in history in the world. And one has to question why there seems to be from certain international or members of the international community, not the same degree of willingness to intervene, perhaps, as we are seeing with Ukraine. I'm not going to comment as to whether or not there is a situation of genocide that is outside of my mandate as such. I would point out to you that there is a deputy secretary general that deals with issues of genocide, and it would be extremely important to raise all of these issues to that office in New York directly. But is there I would say, as an independent expert, that we should do more to address the the massive situation of atrocities and violations of human rights in other parts of the world, and that the attention given to the Ukraine, which is actually legitimate. Also, there is a very significant humanitarian crisis, but this should not actually lead to us forgetting or not dealing with other situations that are outside of Europe that are as bad, and in fact, I would say clearly worse. So therefore, there is a double standard that we should acknowledge. And I would, in reality, agree with you that, yes, we should do a lot to prevent the war, the atrocities committed in the war in the Ukraine, but we should be doing a lot more for Yemen, Syria, and other parts of the world that are further away than Europe. And on that, I'm afraid I am unfortunately going to have to go because of other commitments. I would like to say thank you. I actually very much enjoy participating in the activities that are organized by the Zagros Center and the Tamil movement. I just must say it's unfortunate that I cannot stay any longer, but be aware that I'm always interested and always will try to meet with you again to the extent that my time makes that possible. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I call upon Dr. Paul Newman to present his views. He is a human rights activist, and he is an professor at the University of Bangalore.
No, Father, I already talked. Now it's Sarah. We can start with Sarah.
Okay. So I now call upon Mrs. Sahara Raj, the Tamil Elam human rights activist in exile from UK. And she is with a thorough knowledge of the issue that has taken place in Sri Lanka, and she will be able to present very beautifully. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. I thank the participation of Dr. Fernandi Varanus, the United Nations, special reporters on minority issues, and all participants to this event. I want to take this opportunity to brief you on the current situations of the Elam Tamil struggle. The civil war in Sri Lanka may have ended more than a decade ago. However, the extreme repressions that Tamil face and the militarization of their homeland continues to this day. The Sri Lankan military has stepped up military intelligence operations against the Tamil people who are embroiled in the economic crisis caused by the COVID pandemic and irresponsible actions of Sri Lankan government. The makeshift COVID detention center themselves came under fire from local population in the last year. Though the northeast remained heavily occupied by the Sri Lankan military with tens of thousands of soldiers stationed in the region. Local Tamils braved a crackdown and staged demonstration demanding the centers be set up elsewhere. Many accused them of being driven by racist policy. The regime, however, discarded local concern and instead pressed ahead with the detention center. Sri Lanka's virus prevention strategy has taken on more authoritarian twist with a military-enforced curfew. With little to no support from the state as the country economy plunged, entire livelihoods have been wrecked, particularly in the war-torn northeast with families facing starvation as wage and food supplies stagnated. The regime's highly militarized and politicized approach to a public health crisis has even more sinister undertone. In the last year, as Tamil attempt to mark the anniversary of Mullawaikal massacre, security forces used the pandemic as an excuse to try and shut down commemorations events. As Tamil gathered to light candles for the dead, armed soldiers threatened them to arrest. Court orders were passed to stop politicians from attending the events, and military checkpoints were erected to prevent Tamils from traveling to memorial. Sri Lanka still remains a dangerous place for Tamils due to the active repressions of Tamil citizens. This can be observed through the continued police and military occupations of approximately 3,000 acres, according to the Sinhalese government. And with the continued police and military presence in the prominently Tamil area, instances of police brutally have been de-escalated post-war national liberation struggle, but have rather escalated with the elections of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. This sort of action clearly indicates suppression of voice critically of Tamil oppression, and it's furthermore depict and fascist tactics of silencing opinions that do not align with the government narrative. The Sri Lankan government continued to engage in the cultural genocide of Elam Tamils and other minorities. This is done through rewriting Tamil narratives and through the destructions of Tamil landmarks and artifacts. The Mullawaikal Memorial was demolished, which was remembering the Mullawaikal massacre. This was done during the cover of the night with a strong military presence. Additionally, in Mullawaikal, Kurundur Malai, and other historical places, Hindu temples were demolished to be replaced by Buddhist statues. These acts are proponents of cultural genocide, as the destructions of Tamil artifacts aim to de-emphasize the significance of Tamil Hindu monument and overstate the importance of Sinhalese Buddhist landmark. Also, the Sri Lankan government is using video footage to identify protesters, and this hinder people's right to protest and further escalate the repression of Tamil and other minority groups. Therefore, these drones are a means to discourage people from protesting and discourage them in fighting for their rights in the future. On the more severe end of the spectrum, they will be used to inflict violence or prominently silence activists and journalists. Even in the post-war period, media freedom remained elusive. The media are unable to make use of the constitutional right to free speech, as the government continued to threaten and intimidate journalists who work for any Tamil media which criticize the government. Therefore, we seek your assistance to make awareness with the UN Human Rights Council members, other affiliated UN agencies, and members of state to adopt, as a matter of utmost urgency, the following step to be protect the Tamil nation. Recognize the genocide resolution passed anonymously in the Northern Provincial Council of Sri Lanka on the 10th of February in 2015. Direct appropriate measure at the International Criminal Court outlining that the affected Tamil nations have no faith in any domestic commissions or inquiry. Council members to have a new resolution under Agenda 4 to appoint a special rapporteur to monitor and investigate ongoing human rights violations and repression against Tamil nation. We need to have a special session at the Human Rights Council on Sri Lanka for refer Sri Lanka to the International Criminal Court by the Security Council. To the special reporters and treaty bodies expert, we request you to ensure the human rights defenders in Sri Lanka to carry out their legitimate work in safe and enabling environment without fear of threats, acts of intimidation, or reprisal to the witness and their families, seeking truth and justice, and not to fail to prosecute wrongdoers. It is well known that the victims of genocide in Sri Lanka are Tamils in the hands of single government and its security forces. However, the victims of genocide, war crimes, and other crimes against humanity, naming words, Tamil has been continuously omitted and never mentioned in any of the resolution of HRG and other UN reports. We therefore request you to investigate this omission and to mention the appropriate word of Tamils, name of the ethnic group, wherever it is needful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sara. We have very beautifully articulated and explained and narrated the human rights violation in Sri Lanka by the Sri Lankan government and eclipse the truth and the destruction of Hindu temples and other sanctuaries. And the denial of remembering the martyrs, very beautifully I explained. And you have given a proposal, a special session in UNO for obtaining the rights and say that it is a genocide. So thank you very much. Thank you for beautifully presenting this particular report and very clearly articulated the issue in Sri Lanka. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next I call upon Mr. Muhammad Ram Manifa, an ARC Association for the Defense of Human Rights of Azerbaijani in Iran. Welcome, please welcome and deliver your speech so that we will be enlightened.
Yeah, I think he's not. He was there. Just he left. I think.
He left. Okay. Then next we pass on next one. Then I call upon Mr. Engie Asanji Ban, Southern Cameroon human rights activist in exile, and really is a very good person and experienced person who could articulate the real agony that they undergo in Cameroon. Welcome, please welcome and deliver your speech.
Thank you for that very warm introduction, Dr. Kulani, Comrade Kulani. Appreciate you so much. I want to thank our listeners, viewers, and our audience for today at this Human Rights Council side event. You're very highly welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules, your busy day, to come and talk about issues and listen to issues of self-determination of minority peoples around the world. I want to thank especially our partners in the center and the Tamil movement for always looking out for us. They are our big brothers in as far as championing causes in self-determination, and they've never failed to look out for other co-members who might be pursuing the same goals and aspirations. Cognizant of the fact that we are a majority on this panel, I'm talking about the people of Ambazonia. My comrade Jojo already spoke, and he very elaborately gave a timeline, historical background, happenings, ongoing comparative analysis of the situation of Ambazonia, which is the former British Southern Cameroons. I will not take time. I will not belabor you with all the other historical timelines and happenings. I will just go to some logical questions, conclusions, and analysis, if you may. And I'm not going to take too long because I realize we're majority. We also have to recognize the minority on the panel and let democracy reign right here on the panel. And I want to just point out that, and we all heard the questions and the answers from our very dear special rapporteur. He's always been very supportive. We thank him for that. He left a while ago for other commitments. My worry was whether what we always discuss gets to the places that it needs to go, and if not, what can we do to get it to where it needs to go? So I have more of a suggestion on this question that I've put forth myself, that we have to broaden this movement of minority peoples, because it looks to me like minority peoples around the world, each one is fighting by themselves for themselves, but for a few who from time to time would come together and do these side events and conferences and presentations, but not to a very great scale that would have an impact. I'd like to see an impact, to say that we have to have a global movement of minority peoples. I know there is such a thing, but it's inactive, it's dormant. If we can have a global movement, an active global movement of minority peoples around the world, where we could come together, strategize, plan, and take action on our goals and aspirations, all the goals and aspirations of our people, I believe we can begin to see some actionable results. For example, our Tamil brothers and sisters have been going at it for about 50 years. And it seems to me, though, as if every time they just come and talk, and the government of Sri Lanka just sits in Colombo and do whatever they want and continue to violate rights and continue to abuse people and continue to murder and slaughter people unabated, and nothing really ever happens. We know that these things happen. All these atrocities happen. It'll be needless to come every year or every month or every quarter and just recount or recall the atrocities. And then after that, we go home, of course, in our places of exile overseas. Meanwhile, on our various homelands, our people are still they're being pummeled and pounded by very oppressive regimes and oppressive majority countries. So if minority people around the world could come together, strategize, plan, take action, and set maybe a timetable and say, hey, in the next 24 months, we want to see Western Sahara free from the funds of Morocco. And how are we going to do that? What resources are available at our disposal? What are our options? Then I think we're in a more actionable sphere when we start to do that. So that, without taking so much time, that'll just be a recommendation from me. I wonder if other people share the same view. If we have such a thing of question and answer session, I think I do better in during those sessions rather than just come and tell a story, tell a history, and then we go home and then nothing happens. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Mr. N.J. Bond, very beautifully articulated and very, in a brief, you have explained what exactly minorities should do that. So minorities all over the world should come together and plan out that strategy for obtaining our own rights. So this is how we help each other. This is a very good strategy, very good proposal that you have put forth. Really, I appreciate you and thank you very much for giving these proposals. Now, next, I think Muhammad is present. Mr. Muhammad Ramani, please, you can give your views and then enlighten us. Welcome. You are most welcome.
Excuse me, he has a problem. You
see.
Can wait, please.
Mama is okay. Your system is okay. Not dead.
Okay, I think we can go to the question.
Okay, yeah. When Muhammad, when you are ready, please tell me. Tell me, then we can go. Then meantime, we can go for questions and clarifications. The participants can raise your hands and then ask the speakers who spoke just now. You can raise your questions. You are most welcome. When Muhammad, when you are ready, please you tell me. Tell me. Any questions? Yeah, Harmony. Muptatan, please, you can ask the questions.
Yes, Chair and Moderator. I first of all would like to thank you all for this wonderful discussions. One of the things that some of us, the older guard in human rights advocacy in minority communities of the world have had is that our problem arises from the continuation in the form of neocolonialism. The people who lead our countries, who are oppressing us, are the first prisoners of the former colonial masters. And sorry. Our first what I think we should do is, by the time you leave from together, reflect on what Njiban was proposing, to have a global movement for the majority of minorities. We are available to make our own contribution from the legal standpoint to the national defense team that our cases in every jurisdiction, because the multinationals, through the lobby company firms, determine what in the North and in the West will have to tell their vassals in our minority, in the places where our minority communities exist. And we need to be able to, but we cannot stand up single. We can stand up together. And for example, each year we have the focus for advocacy is going to be on the Tamil minority. The next year, focus on Southern Cameroonian, or every 6 months, we'll focus on this. I think that project excites me, and I'm encouraging everyone to buy into that. I would like to see a resolution direction so that we place the bullets made with metal with the bull minds and our unity.
So any So anyone can respond. The speakers can respond to his statement or his request. So if there is no, yeah.
Thank you very much. Here is one point. Although the suggestion from Comrade Jiban is fantastic and should be followed up, I miss a bit of an echo from the participants here that they sort of agree to it. There's only a few so far. That's number one. Number two is I didn't learn yet who are the and where are the institutions in the United Nations and the governments we should turn to? They haven't been named. There's been said, oh, there is a section within the UN to turn to, but there wasn't a name. We don't know who to approach in person. You know, just it may be that our how to say that our issues land in the bin, you know, because we approach the wrong person and they just don't care. So we need to precise addresses, like, you know, and names who to turn to, and then we can start getting into action. This is what I've been missing. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe for Bosco, please, can you answer, or even the speakers can answer to this question? Yes, this is a crucial, important question that he has raised, and we are also in search of the person who really the right person. But
yeah, I think. Yeah, good evening. I think I can give you small direction. You know. So just for regime, you know, at the United Nations now, they don't want to have any new creation of any new countries or anything else. There is the possibilities. At the fourth committee, you have the special committee on decolonization, where we can expect to bring our cause there. But for that, we need to, one of the thing we are facing, it's, you know, before the years 2000, there was the possibility, more possibilities, because the members of the fourth committee, they are, I mean, you know, they are very small countries, and there is 3 or 4 big countries, but there are a lot of small countries. So we need to orient our action toward those countries. And also at the same time, we have to work with the Human Rights Council system and also General Assembly system. You know, one of the reasons for why we ask to the special rapporteurs, because they will make a report regarding that. So this is, we need to use all the opportunities. It's not easy, you know. It's a long work, and we need to work together. And one of the problem we are facing, it's very difficult to how to say, to create a strong work. I mean, with the different nation and people, we need to work together, and there is a possibilities. So that's why the next step, for example, you have until 2000, you know, we have 2 possibilities. First, it's under third committee of the General Assembly, and there is the fourth committee of the General Assembly. Then also you have the possibility to have the resolution on the right to self-determination at the Human Rights Council. So what I'm telling, it's we need to use the first step. It's to use the Human Rights Council because it's more accessible. Then the second is to use the third and fourth committee of the General Assembly. This is the possibilities. For that, yeah, as I said, we need to, as said Fernando Varenne, because we used to talk. I used to talk with Fernando Varenne 2 days ago. So I think he's also agree for that. I mean, we need to create some kind of a forum with all different nations, and we make our plate together to the third and fourth committee. So this is the possibilities. But for that, we need to unite our efforts and also work together. And one of the thing we are facing, it's, you know, unfortunately, most of the organization nowadays, we don't have enough fund. So that is the big problem we are facing. So that's why, for example, for myself, I try to create a small, I try to create synergy among the different nation and people. This is the possibilities. But for that, what I'm asking, it's please try to be present, because when we each other are here, that is the first step we have to do. Then for example, from my people, most people doesn't know what happened in southern Cameroons or in Western Sahara or in Iran. But now, for last 7-8 years, most of the people from Tamil people, they know what happened to them, because we need to make a noise and work together. This is the only way it's possible. And for that, we need to work together. This is, and also, for example, you know, if we want to go to Sunny Kids, and, you know, it's a small Iceland. If we go there, imagine we have 5 people from Tamils, 5 people from Southern Cameroons, 5 people from Kurdish, 5 people from Western Sahara. And, you know, if we go together, about 50 people or 100 people together to the Island like Fiji or Fiji, Ilmois, or, you know, everywhere, we can ask to have a hearing, because those countries, they are very supportive of the right to self-determination, because they are former country, former colonized countries. So we need to work together, and this is the positive way. But unfortunately, this is what we, Global Tamil Movement, with all our network, this is what we try to build up. But it's very difficult, because I think my friend Dora is there, and also friends from Kurdish, Azad is there, and we try to make it. But we are facing the problem we are facing. It's we don't have even support from our own community. That is a big problem. So I think in future we can win, and we can have more efficient results. But for that, we need to work together and create a similar forum and work regularly on that base. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for enlightening us. Yeah, this is true. It is a Kierkegaard, a philosopher, would say that it is a search in darkness. That's what we all search together with all the minorities, as Inji Ban was suggesting, that all minorities should come together and search for the ways and means to have an effective response from UNO. That's what we also do that, and all make use of all the possible systems that we have in UNO. That's what we need to do that. Thank you very much. Anybody else to ask any questions, any clarifications? Yeah, then Isabella's iPhone, please. You can unmute yourself and then you can ask a question.
Hello, everybody. Greetings. This is Isabella from Southern Cameroon. I wish you, first of all, thank the presenters and everybody who is involved in this project. My first question is, how many of these minority communities are there in the world? because I just came in with the second to the last speaker. How many of these such countries are there in the world? That is my first question. Secondly, I wish to know if this assembly, sorry, there's one program. These meetings, these webinars you'll have, what is the frequency of these webinars? I'm glad to see my brother Barrister Harmony over there. Sorry about that. Let me move. You see my brother Barrister Harmony over there. And my greatest problem is with what I've said concerning the frequency of meetings like this. This is my first time. I'm very happy that I just got the opportunity. I just got the link now, and I decided to join in. So what is the frequency of these meetings, and what is the link between all these countries? The previous speaker just from me brought out the proposal, but now I wish to know if all these countries have been identified and we have like focal persons, people who are there to represent. If somebody talk of 5 persons each to be able to go to the UN. Now, what are we going to do? What are you doing to sustain this program? To imagine that all the countries involved are properly sensitized, knowing that, for instance, Southern Cameroon knows that this is another country, and it will be a very good thing to let all these countries involved to know themselves through some kind of sensitization program with those who are inside in the program to let us know ourselves. And secondly, so when they go ahead, we have people to come and give us feedback. So I'm very grateful that I got the opportunity to listen to you people, and thankful for everything you people are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participation and your appreciation and the involvement that you show. Thank you very much, Isabella. Thank you. Anybody else who wants to ask any question or clarification? If that is not there, then we'll wind.
For just Father, forgive her the replay. Okay. I think the minorities, it's more than 300 minorities around the world who are seeking for internal self-determination, and over 70 or 120 different nations who are seeking for their right to external right to self-determination. And the purpose of this kind of meeting, it's, we have the possibility to update to the UN special procedure methodologies first. Second, it's to this kind of meeting, it's also possibility to exchange our mutual experience. Third, it's also very important to note that Human Rights Council, now the Human Rights Council, it's going on until next 1st April. And for example, when we normally we used to organize side events during the Human Rights Council session directly, but now because of the COVID issue, we organize it on the by Zoom. But in future, we can organize directly at the Human Rights Council and also in New York during the General Assembly meetings. And also it's, the problem is we need to make voice. I mean, if you people alone, Southern Cameroons, if you organize a meeting only among yourself, it will not going outside. And for example, if we Tamil people, we organize with our, for example, we organize last Monday, we organized a big protest in front of the United Nations in Geneva. It was a big news only for Tamil people. But if we organize together this kind of meeting and also protest together, and what I ask, it's you can also share the information to your network. and at the same time, we exchange the information to our network. This is how it works. So, you know, before, I mean, until the years of the 90s, the right to self-determination was one of the biggest issue at the Human Rights Council. But now the right to self-determination agenda, it's you know, it's not exist properly at the Human Rights Council. And now when we talk about the right to self-determination, they talk only about Palestine issue, and 5 countries started to talk about Western Sahara issue. But for Tamils or Southern Cameroons or all other different nations, they don't talk. So that's why it's important as a people or nation, we work together first. We work together. Then the next step is it's to mutualize our experience and also our contacts. For example, as I said, how many of you there know that there is a possibility at the General Assembly? So this is why it's very important, because you know, the Western countries, they specifically try to how to say, to not finance all the any researcher or all other you know, at the university level. They stopped to finance people regarding the right to self-determination, because they don't want any more separation from different countries. They are ready to accept, for example, they are ready to, France is ready to accept to work with the Cameroon, even though Cameroon are doing a kind of genocide against Southern Cameroon people. France, it's ready to work with Yemen, even there is a kind of human rights violation and mass atrocities against Southern Cameroon people. Sorry, Southern Yemen people. So that's why for us, it's very important to work together and to bring, how to say, I mean, this is very important part of the work, because I mean, for example, as I told before, about 6-7 years ago, Tamil people doesn't know what happened, what is happening to Western Sahara people or Southern Cameroon's people. Now, I'm sure among Tamil activists, if there are the 1,000 hardcore activists, about minimum 300 people know about what happened to Southern Cameroon's people. So this is how we need to work together, and yeah.
So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for in the explanation, clarifications are given. I think now, Ingebon, you have any questions or you want to answer? You can unmute yourself and you can answer. Yeah, you can ask.
Thank you, Dr. Kulani. I want to thank my sister from the Southern Cameroon, she calls it, Ambazonia, for coming, for just getting the invitation and joining right away. You're very welcome. We had been on before you came on, so a lot of things were discussed. We even had a special rapporteur from the United Nations who was with us on minority issues, who was with us, but he had to excuse himself for other official duties. Your question about what's the frequency of these meetings, the Human Rights Council of the United Nations typically have 4 standard meetings during the year, quarterly meetings. So 4 times every 3 months, and sometimes it's like 2 in Geneva, and 1 in I think Vienna or so, and then there's another one in New York. But they're always year-round events, say approximately every month. If there are special issues, maybe at the Human Rights Council, in Geneva, to which most of us have been going there largely on an individual basis since 2018, and where we had the privilege to meet our Tamil friends and our friends from the Western Sahara and our friends from Iran and our friends from other minority groups. So these meetings are ongoing, these events are ongoing, and there are opportunities for minority issues to be presented and discussed. Just whether they have such an effect, immediate effect that we would want, is what we are trying to see get better. Sheikh Kijika also asked if whose name is it at the UN that we have to talk to or bring these issues to their attention. Because the UN is quote unquote a democratic institutions, they always revolve these people, they always have elections, they come by mandates. Every now and then, you know, they would recycle and have new people. Some people's mandate don't get renewed. So my input on that would be, rather than focus on the people or the individuals concerned, we focus on the office, and it's good to know that there is a rapporteur for minority issues at the United Nations, who is an independent expert, who doesn't work for the United Nations, but works with the United Nations, works as a liaison person between the outsider and the in-house people. There is also that for every other department or every other issue that you might have. Somebody brought up the issue of genocide. If you feel that there is a genocide being committed anywhere in the world, there is a hotline at the United Nations or an office and a contact person that is in charge of that, which was just not Dr. Varens, Fernand de Varens, the one that we had today, who was precisely for minority issues. He's the special rapporteur to the United Nations on minority issues. There is a rapporteur, there are vice presidents or vice chair people or chair people in charge of genocide, in charge of migration, in charge of just whatever political affairs, just whatever subject you might come up with. So they have a website, a very elaborate website for the United Nations. It's a very humongous website, very big database. That is why it's particularly good for all minority groups to come together and really harness their resources, because this group might be good in organizing, this group might be good in research, this group might be good in finance operations. This group, if we bring all those capabilities together, we can come out with a powerful movement that we are able to operationalize what we are talking about and aspiring for, and really see goals. If we can have, without going too much into the meat, if we can have just, I gave the example of Western Sahara earlier, because I see that, you know, they are literally a country that just got invaded, and, you know, nobody, I don't know if they have no friends or no big brother, and nobody really cared. But if we could have Western Sahara, say next year or the year after, having a seat at the UN General Assembly, since the UN is only for member states and member nations, if we have birthed a nation into the United Nations General Assembly, that nation then has the possibility of bringing up the issue of other minority nations, and one by one, we can then free ourselves from the shackle of colonialism, neo-colonialism, oppression, annexation, and all those other things. So my appeal is that we come together and use these good offices of the United Nations that are greatly underutilized, largely because we don't understand it. Not everybody, some people get it very well, but I'm talking as far as minority people, we don't understand, and we don't know how to make these systems work in our advantage in obtaining what we want. Because we could be asking for something and fighting for years on end. If we can't deliver, then at the end of the day, we would have done no good to ourselves. So we would like to see some results. I believe everybody here wants to see some results. If I hear tomorrow that the Tamil people are recognized, they have a greater autonomy, or they're a complete country, the land of Tamil Elam is free tomorrow, and I can take an airplane and go to the Tami Elam, whichever airport they'll designate, rather than go to Colombo before going to the hinterlands, then that'll be great news. That'll be very exciting. So let's make this happen. Let's get energized. Let's get to work. Let's network. Let's see how we can caucus together and come together and build something that is going to be a formidable movement that we can even ask for this movement to be a country on its own and have a seat, even though we are in different geographic locations around the world, and have it. Because if you go by the millions of people in these various movements, Ambazonia says that they have about 8 million people. Tamil, I'm not sure how many there are, but all these various movements, about 300 of them, as Mr. Bosco just stated earlier, it could be more if we really get our research teams and go down to the field and actually take an account of all minority peoples that are aspiring. Then we can list them. They can be in the hundreds of millions. And then we can now say that, look, you have small countries of hundreds of thousands of people or a few million people. Here are hundreds of millions of people who want to have the right to be represented. Would you rather have a political entity with 5 million people having a vote, and you have a block of 300 million people who are well organized, not having a seat at the table? I believe such an argument will be difficult, at least from the phase from an open standpoint to debate. So thank you very much. I just wanted to make those two clarifications. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Enshibon. Beautifully explained and clarified, and the challenge that we face, the challenge that's in front of us. I think you are very well articulated. Thank you very much. Thank you for suggesting and giving an orientation for going further. So that's what your contribution. Thank you. Thank you very much. So anybody else, you have any questions? Then we otherwise we'll wind up this session. If there is no anything, then I'll say a word of thanks to all the speakers possible. Someone has raised a question. Nebaba Kemu Ray.
Greetings.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, greetings, you all. Neba Kanimudre. I would like to, I represent the non-government organization known as the Association of African Descendants Worldwide, under the title of Wajet Mentu Hotep El. And so the focus is of melanated people of the Western Hemisphere's land called America, coordinating with melanated people of the Western Hemisphere's, Eastern Hemisphere's land called Africa, who are dwelling in America, in order to connect with those who are of Africa, melanated people who are from there. And now my question that I have is whenever we're talking about minorities, there's various titles of minorities. I would like to know what is being referred to whenever you all are mentioning minorities, so I'll be able to gain a perspective in regards to what's being communicated about in regards to the United Nations and human rights.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions? If you have anything, you can put forth. Yeah.
Yes. Now, because in regards to that of like for everyone working together and to gain representation, I've learned that it's of identifying like the social barriers that are between particular minorities, and then after identifying those on a local level, people working to be able to overcome those, to be be able to accomplish particular goals, whether if it's being able to develop a system of gathering funds to support representation of particular representatives, as far as in platforms like the United Nations and such. So once the social barriers are recognized, like for example, of how do those who are from other countries view melanated people that are from Africa, or melanated people that are so-called Black that are from America. How do they interact with each other? Are they taught to avoid one another? Are people from India taught to avoid people who are melanated and that are from America? Are they taught to avoid people who are melanated and that are from Africa? So how do we overcome those barriers, especially if those barriers are being developed from the stage of growing, or lineage is willing to break those barriers and break those particular impressions that they would put on their children's minds or the young people's minds, that are creating barriers to not be able to collaborate or integrate with each other in regards to knowledge, and also in regards to sharing skills. Because if those barriers aren't broken, what happens is that you have situations that arise where you have people from India try to take advantage of people who are from the Americas whenever it comes to doing business. They'll try to take advantage of people who are from India and from the Americas. Those who are from India may try to take advantage of people who are melanated and from Africa whenever it comes to doing business. Because they may have certain opinions or certain views that are in not well in regards to being able to maintain respect for one another whenever it comes to maintaining good social connections. So those particular barriers must be identified. So whenever it comes to representing people, representing men and women, not just this term minorities, because we all must look at the Georgia Guidestones. We must look at that with certain things that have been created by Europeans to want to devise plans to be able to have melanated people pinned against each other, and also the people of India, discriminating against melanated people from the Americas and from Africa, and also people from China developing some form of discrimination against melanated people from Africa and from melanated people of America as well. Because we must identify these certain plots that have been developed, so we be able to know how to overcome those barriers. Because where I dwell in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, melanated people who are indigenous to this land called America, people from India do not interact with us. They don't even say hi to us. People who are from China don't even interact with us. Don't even say hi to us at all. You know what I mean? Like they're already given a misconception, from being raised, to not talk to us, to just go and get the education, go and develop relationships with Africa to get the resources, and take it back, and so they can go create their developments in their particular country for their own particular purposes. So it seems it just gives off the social disconnection to only just want the resources but not want to develop.
Okay, friend. Be brief.
Okay, but yes, I yield.
Other three are there. Therefore,
Yes, because those barriers really need to be known, but I yield.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your suggestions and the explanations. And Sheikh Kijang, you have raised questions. You can.
Okay.
Answer.
Yes, thank you very much. Answering the question of and the statement of my predecessors seems to be pretty easy in the first place. We can overcome these differences by understanding who we are, that we are all minorities, and that we have a common goal. And if we find the common goal, then this barrier won't exist. But you referred particularly to the population, different countries and beliefs and minorities within the United States. Well, this is another thing. We are talking here about a global movement of minorities. We're not talking about minorities within specific countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Last intervention. With that, we will wind up. I think Christoph Hans Mesra. The last intervention.
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you very much to the hosts. I am Christoph Messner, a German political writer who is also engaged for the Ambazonians in Africa. And I want to respond to the second predecessor who was talking, Mr. Neb Ba. He's using an Egyptian name. The thing is, I understand his concern that it is so difficult to overcome the social barriers between different ethnicities and people from very different geographical regions who have a different history and so on. But I also want to repeat what my predecessor, Sheikh Kijika, just said. The common goal is so important, but we must be honest. Yeah? If we honestly talk to each other, our limits and our goal, our objectives, our concerns, I think we can find common ground. And that's what we are actually doing right here. We're coming all from different regions of the planet, but we are suffering from being a minority, maltreated by repressive governments. So there's a potential to help each other and tell each other our experiences and how to build up more effective resistance, for example, how to get better legal advice, how to learn to get to the right people at the UN or other institutions. So I would just say the first step you need to do is tell your real name to everybody. Be open. And then it is a very toilsome thing to learn from each other, because you need to listen to the other group first, you know, where their wounds are or where they have probably some misunderstandings. And it takes a lot of time. So we need to learn to look away from our own problems a bit, you know, to be able to listen to the other side and how they manage this problem of oppression and repression and so on. No? So the widening of horizon is never easy. Yeah? You will find out that you're not alone in the world and that it takes so much time and sacrifices, you know, to reach really a global scale, to come out of the regional or provincial thinking and, you know, to learn different languages, for example, yeah, or to learn the histories of each nation is just very toilsome. And then you find out, you know, that nobody is perfect. And from there, I think we can definitely reach a progress We just need to do the work. That's all I wanted to say. And thank you again, everybody, for putting up this wonderful Zoom meeting. So let's get back to homework. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, Christopher. And Vincent, beautifully articulated and encouraged the people how to go about. Really, it's a beautiful support, that moral support that you have given us. So thank you, vielen Dank. So beautifully you have done it. Okay, then now we'll come to an end and saying that all the people really participated with enthusiasm and with the clarity, with the thoughts. So therefore, I thank all the speakers today. They presented their papers and their ideas, and their opinions, suggestions, and the strategies with which we should go about. So all those things that are beautifully they have explained. So therefore, first of all, I thank all the speakers who presented their opinions and suggestions. The next, all the participants who participated in this particular meeting, and I really appreciate today new faces. I think many people come with the new background, new ideas, and I think this is a good thing that I think this particular Zoom meeting is widening. Widening is it's what do you call it, reach. So that's what it is a very good thing that we find always, so that people can come together and discuss together and help each other, and then present as one body. A global minority group can present this particular issue in UNO or international bodies, so that we can obtain our own rights, and the rights that are denied will be obtained again. So that's what I really appreciate all the people who really participate with eagerness. So therefore, thank all the participants who participated in this particular meet. And also I thank particularly the Zoom meeting was organized by Association Bharati CCFT with a partnership at the Centre Sacros pour le Droit de l'Homme. I think that's another thing. Then Global Tamil Movement. So all these movements, they have really took interest and contacted person and asked them to participate and present the paper. And that's what is really a wonderful thing that we have. So therefore, I thank all the movements who organized this particular Zoom meeting, and particularly Mr. Bosco and Nisha and Prabhu and all the people who really participated in this particular thing. I think I sincerely thank the effort that we take. Our effort will not go futile without achieving anything. I think it will bear fruit in the future when we work together, when we discuss with each other and learn from each other. That's what we need to also always learn from them. So therefore, once again, I thank everybody, particularly the special rapporteurs for minorities, and they have presented a very beautiful thing. So therefore, once again, I thank everyone, and we'll meet again with new strategies, new plans, new agendas, so that we can continue to work together. This is what a global collaboration that can achieve anything that we want. So thank you very much. Thank you once again to everybody, and we'll meet again. Thank you.